ActionSA is indisputably on the rise, according to Herman Mashaba, that is. But is he correct? Here's what the data shows. So late last week, Herman Mashaba decided to take to X to celebrate what he considers a rise in support for ActionSA. So his post in particular was referring to the by-election results on September the 10th in Johannesburg. During this by-election, ActionSA actually came in second with about 22.66% of the vote. Although this result may seem quite impressive, it's important to understand the context. The reason I say this is because when looking at by-elections, it's important to understand that there are far fewer voters taking part than in general elections or even municipal elections. So, as we check out the IEC election dashboard, we see that the ANC won with 34% of the vote, but they only received 1,426 votes. Sure, ActionSA was able to come in second with 22.66% of the vote. But again, it only equates to 947 votes. So yes, they can boast that they beat MK, although only by 42 votes, and they beat the EFF by a little over 200 votes. But this is a very, very small area. Still, it's worth looking at this result in order to try and determine a trend. Are ActionSA actually on the rise, as Herman Mashaba claims? Or is this simply a false statement? To determine the answer, we can take a look at past results and see how they fared. So, during the 2024 elections, if we look at how ActionSA did in Ward 130 on the provincial ballot, we see that they won 7.7% of the vote with 634 votes. Now, this is actually quite significant because generally in by-elections, voter turnout is much lower than general and municipal elections. So the fact that ActionSA were able to turn out more voters is a pretty decent achievement, and we certainly do have to give them credit there. However, if we look back at the 2021 municipal elections, we see a very different story. You see, in 2021, when ActionSA were at their peak, they got 20.65% of the vote in Ward 30 in Johannesburg. This equated to 2,377 votes. That's more than double what they received in 2024 and in the latest by-election last week. Now, this is quite important to note because what happened in Ward 30 very much reflects what's been going on in the provincial and national landscape for ActionSA. If we take a look at their performance in Johannesburg as a whole, back in 2021, ActionSA did really well. They came third in the city behind the ANC and the DA. So on the PR ballot, they received 18.1% of the vote, or over 167,000 votes. If we switch to the ward, we see that they received almost 129,000 votes, or 14%, again finding themselves in third place. Fast forward to the national elections of 2024, and we saw just how badly ActionSA slumped. They received only about 67,600 votes on the national ballot, which is 4.7%. And if we switch to the provincial ballot, we see that they only got 88,000 votes, 6.2% of the vote. And so we see just how badly they capitulated. However, if we look at this in the broader context, it still seems that ActionSA's stronghold, if we could call it that, is the city of Johannesburg and Gauteng at large. So, as we've established, ActionSA got 6.2% in Johannesburg. And if we are to zoom out to the provincial picture, We see that ActionSA got 4.2% of the votes in Gauteng in total in 2024. That's over 163,000 votes. Nationally, however, ActionSA were only able to receive 1.1% of the vote, which shows that, much like in 2021, the vast majority of their support remains in Gauteng and specifically in Johannesburg. After all, during the 2021 local elections, when ActionSA were certainly on the rise, they didn't do too well in eThekwini, for example, which is in KZN. So ultimately, it seems as if, yes, ActionSA did well to bring out more voters during last week's by-election, but there is still no data to suggest that they are indisputably on the rise, like Herman Mashaba calls it. Remember, by-elections are a very small snapshot of what's really going on. In each ward, there are only going to be a couple of hundred or a couple of thousand voters, and a very low voter turnout at that. Ultimately, it seems pretty clear that ActionSA is a party in trouble. While they may be able to perhaps revive themselves in Gauteng and in places such as Johannesburg and Tshwane, nationally, it seems like there really isn't much potential for growth.